What's up, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok? How y'all doing? It's your favorite YouTuber in the whole wide world, Mr. Bama Ballistics, Mr. Mally Malali. Boy, this finna be a long one. Oh, now. Yeah. Sorry, I had to wet my throat. But before I get started, from here on out, anytime I say according to in a video, I'm just going to go ahead and post a link to whatever article I'm quoting either in the description or pinned comments. But it'll probably be a direct quote, but might even be a paraphrase. So if at any time you want to check my sources, there they are. And this applies to not only this video, but any video from here on out. All right. But anyway, I got a question for y'all. I've been doing a little bit of research, and I'd like to know why there hadn't been any broke folks running for president, like at all. Because from what I've seen on paper anyway, didn't actually take a whole lot. I mean, you ain't got to be rich. You ain't got to be famous. Hell, based on what I've seen out of Biden, you ain't even got to be very smart. Because according to LOC.gov, the official website for the Library of Congress, the legal requirements for presidential candidates hadn't changed since George Washington. According to the Constitution, a presidential candidate must be a natural-born citizen of the United States, a resident for 14 years, and 35 years of age or older. Well, what do you know? I made all three of those requirements. And based on my YouTube analytics, which is how I keep track of traffic on my channel, so do most of y'all. So what's up? Y'all up for the challenge or what? Because if you are, I'm finna tell you how to do it. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do is register with the FEC, or the Federal Election Commission. According to FEC.gov, an individual running for seat in the House or Senate, or for the office of the U.S. President, becomes a candidate when he or she raises or spends more than $5,000 in contributions or expenditures. Money raised and spent to test the waters does not count toward this dollar threshold until the individual decides to run for federal office or conducts activities that indicate he or she is actively campaigning rather than testing the waters. Whatever that might mean. But anyway, the $5,000 threshold is reached when the individual and or persons they have authorized to conduct campaign activity receive over $5,000 in contributions or make over $5,000 in expenditures. Or when the individual fails to disavow unauthorized campaign activity by writing a letter to the FEC within 30 days after being notified by the agency that another person or group has received contributions or made expenditures of more than $5,000 on the individual's behalf. So basically, if you're doing a good job at mayor or sheriff or something like that, and the whole damn town wants you to be the president, you still have to want to be the president. And you have to tell the FEC, I don't want to be the president. But anyway. Within 15 days after an individual becomes a candidate, as described, they must designate a principal campaign committee. This designation is made by filing either a statement of candidacy, Form 2, or a letter with the same information. A candidate required to file electronically cannot designate a principal campaign committee with a written letter, but must instead file Form 2. Candidates who file electronically are required to use Form 2. Candidates who file by paper can use either Form 2 or a letter with the same information that's captured on Form 2. The statement of candidacy requires a candidate's signature, collects some basic information, including the candidate's name and address. It's also where the candidates authorize any campaign committees is working for them. Now, I know 5,000 ain't exactly chump change, but ain't a whole hell of a lot either, especially not for a presidential bid, but you will need to raise some money to go with it. That's where the political party comes in. Now, of course, if you got the money to fully fund your own campaign, you can always run as independent. Now, as for myself, I'd probably run as a Republican. Duh. Look at the rest of my channel. All right. But the thing is, if you're going to go with a party, you obviously have to convince that party that you're, worth their time, effort, and dollars. All that starts at the state level. Well, county level, anyway. But the first thing you're going to have to do is win the caucuses at the county level. And for those of y'all that don't know, according to USA.gov, caucuses are private meetings run by political parties and are held at the county, district, or precinct level. If you live in a big fancy city like New York, you might go by precinct instead of county. But, anyway, in most of the meetings, participants divide themselves into groups according to the candidate they support. Undecided voters form their own group, and each group gives speeches supporting its candidate and tries to get others to join the group. At the end, the number of voters in each group determines how many delegates each candidate has won. Then it's on to state primaries. State primaries are run by state and local governments, and voting happens by secret ballot. Both primaries and caucuses can be open, closed, or some hybrid of the two. During an open primary or caucus, people can vote for a candidate of any political party. During a closed primary or caucus, only voters registered with that party can take part and vote. Semi-open and semi-closed primaries and caucuses are variations of the two main types. Now, I know this is getting a little long and I'm probably talking pretty fast, so just to recap what we have so far. You got to be born in the U.S. Bing. Have been a citizen for more than 14 years. Bing. Be 35 years old. Bing. Be able to raise $5,000. Bing. Start going through the caucus and primary process and obviously make it through your state's primaries. Now, assuming that you do win the caucus and the primaries, then it's on to the national convention for you and your party. Now, most of your party's delegates go with you they're already going to vote for you anyway, most of them. But there'll probably be a handful of undecided delegates too, so you still have to sway them. Now, assuming that they actually confirm you at the convention, congratulations. You are now a presidential candidate. So go ahead and choose your vice president and pop a few tops. Just be careful, though, because now you got to convince the rest of the country. But again, that's where your affiliated party and campaign manager comes into play. Because through the entire process, they've been raising money and trying to make you look like the best president that's ever lived, while simultaneously making the other guy look like the worst criminal that's ever failed to die. All right. Tell me I'm wrong. But now the rest of the process is basically, common knowledge. Go on TV a lot, make a lot of speeches, choose whatever platform you're going to run on, and all that other mess we get to see every 4 years or so. But basically what I'm trying to say is, if it's that easy, why ain't I seen any broke folk trying to do it? Why is it always rich folk? We ain't got nothing in common with 95% of the rich folk. Not a damn thing. Not a damn thing. Now, there's probably less than 5% that came from where us commoners are at, us peasants. Then there's the middle classers that got lucky and caught a break and worked their way up to rich folk status. But as for the rest of us, we're screwed right now. We have zero representation. None. Nada. Because all I ever hear when they bring up the economy is upper class and middle class. You almost never hear a presidential candidate or any other politician for that matter talking about us broke folk. They almost always make decisions based on how it's going to affect the rich and the middle class. Because that's where all the money is. I mean, they know if they make the right ones happy, they'll get even richer. As for me, if I was to actually win the presidency, here's how I'd look at it. I was broke when I got the job, so I really don't give a damn if I'm broke when I leave the job. You know how much the president makes compared to how much I make? I just looked it up a little while ago, and according to balancemoney.com, The current salary for the president of the United States is $400,000 per year, with an expense account for $50,000. I make about 30 grand a year, and I don't get a damn expense account, much less a pension after only 4 years. Now let's do the math on that. If they only serve 4 years, that's $1.6 million. Fuck it. Let's go for broke and assume that they served the full 8 years, all right? That'd be $3.2 million. Now assume that my wages, hours, taxes, and other deductions stay exactly the same for the next 8 years. 8 years. That's about $240,000. So basically they make 13.3 infinity times what the actual average American makes. Because the actual average American is just barely skirting by, if they're skirting by at all. Now, just for the fun of it, let's break it down into weekly. I usually make about $600 a week, so multiply 600 times 13.33333333333333333, and you get 8,000 per week. Good God, man. You know what I could do with $8,000? I'll tell you what I could do. $8,000. That's a lot of limeritas. Well, this is mango, but they didn't have any lime. Ugh. The average person could not only pay all their bills for the entire month off of just 1 week's salary, but put another week with it and go buy a really good used car. Put another week with that, and you're getting into brand new car territory. And speaking of brand new cars, I got something to say about that in a minute. But every president that I've ever heard of was already rich before they got in the office. It's just guaranteed money to them anyway. An investment. Because I was only talking about the straight up salary. I didn't even bring up pension. See, the problem is the leaders of this country are so far disconnected from us that they have no idea what we actually want, and they don't even give a damn. They get on a little soapbox and they pretend like they care, but they really don't. Because at the end of the day, after their 4 to 8 years, they're going back to their mansions and ranches and living out the rest of their lives in the utmost of comfort, the lap of luxury. Meanwhile, us broke folk have to deal with a mess that they left behind. And to really break it down for you, think about it like this. All right. Let's say Joe Little joins the Army. He works his way up to Sergeant First Class, and for whatever reason, it's taken him 20 years to get there. All right. By now, he's like 40 years old. He's about to retire out of the military, unless he wants to really go further. But, you've been in there 20 years and you're a Sergeant First Class, dude. Like, really? Meanwhile, Sergeant Little's high school best friend, who didn't join the Army, starts a family. At the same time, he's going through basic and whatnot. His friend is over here getting married. Now, their son ends up going to West Point, does some other college level ROTC or something, and immediately joins the Army after graduation. He gets fast-tracked to second lieutenant. Now, unless I'm wrong, that would be a platoon leader rank. I learned all that when I was in JROTC in high school, so it's been a while because I'm 35 years old. Finna be 36 here in about a month. But anyway, just like that, Sergeant First Class Joe Little has been in the Army for 20 years, served on the front lines outside the wire, probably 2 or 3 wars by then. Now he's got to take orders from a guy that would be about his son's age, assuming that he had one, whose only on-the-job experience is training, where everything usually goes according to plan. Now, if you can imagine that level of disconnect between those two people, apply that to the rich versus poor argument, and you'll see what I mean. These rich assholes leading this country they got absolutely not shit in common with us peasants. They have no idea what it's like to have to borrow $25, $30 from a friend or coworker on a Wednesday so they can have lunch, gas, and drinks until Friday. All right? They have no idea. Y'all remember when Obama froze the government? I do. I was working a cash job for less than minimum wage because it was the only job I could find at the time, and was living with a girlfriend who was drawing both SSI. At least I catch my golfs. I ain't like fuckhead. All right. He just runs with it. I catch my shit and I correct myself. But anyway, she was getting SSI and food stamps when that happened. The state we lived in had to cut out food stamps altogether for a couple of months on kind of that shit, and cut her SSI to the point where she had to choose between paying the rent and paying the power bill. Now, of course, I chipped in on the power bill and had to cover everything else while I was at it. I mean, I didn't even have a vehicle at the time because I couldn't afford one. She didn't either because she couldn't afford one. So that included not only paying a ride to the grocery store, but also said groceries for 2 people for 2 months. We both lost some weight on that one. All right. But also, he could strong arm Congress into passing his precious bill that ended up costing all of us even more money. These rich assholes get in power and write these bills and executive orders that end up making our already difficult lives even harder. And while I'd vote Trump again in a heartbeat, one of the first things he did was to change the food stamp program so that applicants applicants who didn't qualify for disability benefits could only receive food stamps for 60 days out of the year. Now here I am, got fired during a recession, and only found this out when I stopped at the food stamp office to apply for food stamps on the way home so I could go ahead and get that ball rolling. Because you don't just go in there, fill out the paperwork, and get them. You got to wait a couple of weeks. And in a couple of weeks, I would have been getting my final paycheck off of that other job. But anyway, I was trying to get everything going before I went completely broke. Which, by the way, I was lucky enough to get going back to work within a week or 2, but only because I worked that place before. But I could have very easily had to do without. All right. I was that close. And now, here comes bumbling Biden with his damn anti-gun agenda. All the other broke folk Democrat voters, they just shake their heads and say, Democrats ain't coming for your guns, you crazy. Then here comes the race riots and the potential total lockdowns, which could have very easily had your next door neighbor coming to rob you. The last person you would think would do some shit like that, they got to choose between feeding their kids and letting you eat. Yeah, they finna rob your ass. Now you got all these Democrats wanting to buy guns and finding out the hard way, it ain't as easy as they thought. Not if you want a brand new one anyway, or one from a pawn shop. I mean, of course, you could just go to Joe Schmo and buy one of his extras, if he's willing to sell. But now they're having to fight the very people they voted for just to keep the guns that they bought. What, didn't give up and just go ahead and sell them? Meanwhile, part of my nightly routine is to listen to fellow YouTubers talk about all the brand new gun regulations from the ATF and the anti-gun bills, while I'm heating up a supper. One of the very first ones Biden tried to shove through was HR 127, which I have a video out on where I sit there and read it word for word. It's way back when I first started my YouTube channel. Go look it up if you want to hear that word for word. The bullshit that they put in that bill. All right. Anyway, basically, it would have ended up costing me the price of an average used car just to keep the guns and accessories that I already had way back then. All right. That bill right there would have pretty much made gun ownership so expensive that only other rich assholes like them could afford to have them. All that at a time when the average American needed a gun the most. And now he's pushing the whole electric car thing. Told you I was going to get back into cars. Yeah. While simultaneously leaving out the one guy who actually stands a chance at getting it done in such a way that we can afford to buy them. And the electric car problem is a paradox, by the way. If you don't know what a paradox is, it's a problem that cannot be solved without outside input. There's no electric cars on the road in my area because there's nowhere to charge them in my area. Unless you also buy this expensive-ass home charging unit. Either that or the slow way, plugging it into a 110 outlet. Good God, that'd take all night. Some of the best ones out there can only go a couple of hundred miles before they absolutely have to be recharged. Now, I happen to live about 15 miles away from my job. That's about 30 miles round trip, 5 days a week. That's 150 miles every week. The closest charging station to me is about 35, 40 miles away. So, assuming that my car can make it 200 miles on one charge, I'd either have to go to work on Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then go spend the night, because it ain't like filling up gas. This shit takes hours. Trust me. I live alone. I watch a lot of YouTube rather than standard TV. Yeah, I've looked into it. It ain't like going to the gas pump and 10 minutes you're done. Try 10 hours. Yeah. Anyway, go spend the night at a charging station, then go back to work Thursday morning. Or potentially miss a day every week so I can charge my car by the 110 plug. So he ain't thinking about the probable $400 or $500 a month car payment, much less the fact that most car dealerships require the buyer to keep full coverage insurance until they get the car paid off. That might be 5 or 6 years. On top of the increase in your power bill. Well, you're not going to be paying for gas, so you can afford to pay. You could take that money and put it on your power. Yeah. Until the power company goes, holy shit! Look at the increase on that. God dang, we got to build all this infrastructure. My power bill right now, $120 a month for this little bitty camper, and my lights go off when I leave because I got smart lights. They're linked into my Wi-Fi. All right. And I've got it programmed to where when my phone leaves about a 10-mile radius or a 5-mile radius of here, my lights go off. When I come back, they come back on. I got them set to automatically come on in the morning. It still don't hardly wake me up, but it helps. But anyway, even with that, my power bill is like $120 a month in a freaking camper. Imagine if I had to charge my car. Good God. It'd probably be like $500 damn dollars. And then with the current battery technology, the batteries are going to wear out way before the rest of the car. And them things run about 30 grand a piece. So you telling me we got to not only keep doing what we're doing, minus buying gas, but do all that, plus put up about a year's salary so we can change the battery when the damn thing comes time to change it? Basically, what I'm trying to say here is all these rich-ass folks are ever going to do is make our lives even harder than they already are. Well, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I done about had enough. I say us broke folks need to stand up and stand together. To hell with going to the polls and voting for the lesser of the two evils on the ballot. Why should we do that when we can just as easily flood the ballot with our own kind? Let's take a play out of their book. They love throwing spitballs at the wall until one of them sticks because chances are that if you throw enough of them, one of them will. So if we throw enough of ourselves at the ballots, chances are that one of us will win. I had enough dealing with the aftermath of their disconnect. It's time we put somebody in office who don't give a damn about making more money other than their presidential salary. Somebody that could gladly live out the rest of their life on what these rich assholes consider to be chump change. Somebody with a sense of morality. Somebody who has principles and will stand by them to the bitter end. Somebody who cannot be bought, corrupted, blackmailed, because almost nothing is worse than the life that they came from anyway. It's time we put the broke folks in charge. Now, I know most would consider that to be a risk. Because if they're not leading a company, then how the hell are they going to lead a nation? Well, we've already lost so much as a nation that there's almost no risk. There's nothing left to it. There's not much more to lose. If we go very much further, down the inflation path that we're on right now, we ain't gonna be very different than the run-of-the-mill third world country. All right. The problem is obvious. We keep electing rich bitches to try to sort out all the problems of the masses. Us average Americans, us broke folk. I don't think there's ever been a poor man or a woman elected president. That is the one solution that we haven't yet tried. As been said, the very definition of insanity is to approach the same problem in the same way and expect a different outcome. So how are things ever going to get better for this country if we just keep throwing the same damn solution at the same problem? It won't. So with that, I say it's time to take a chance. It's time to make a change. Are you with me?